Hi guys, Allison here, the Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode of the Bored Housewife. If you're enjoying this, please like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on my other social media accounts. I am filming this in September, but this is now October, and in a few weeks I will be delivering new episodes from Japan, so I'm super excited about that. Also on my social media and all of that, if you haven't been following along, I've been traveling around Florida and up the East Coast and into Kentucky, and then we're going to head out to Seattle where we fly to Japan. So at this point in the trip, I don't think we've gotten to Seattle yet, or Japan, but it'll be coming in the next week or so. So once I land there, hopefully not the next episode, but the week after that, or 2 weeks after the next episode, it'll be like mid-November, I will have an episode from our wonderful hotel room in Japan because we have to be in quarantine for several weeks. But, this week I'm going to finish up the series of talking about just finding ourselves and implementing the practices and what all that kind of means, and just trying to feel more fulfilled and better our lives, and especially doing that through philosophy. If you're just kind of like catching on to this, or if it's been a while since you've watched this, I've definitely taken the podcast in a different direction where I'm focusing more on philosophical ideas, just because I think it's really helpful to be enlightened and to sort of have like a wider perspective of the world and how we think of things. And I think philosophy does that rather than like self-help books a lot of times. I think just kind of narrow in and focus on really small ideas and aren't always relatable. I think philosophy in any sense can be relatable, especially when we're talking about it to ourselves, and trying to be better, trying to find happiness, all of that. That's something that every human on this planet is searching for, whether they realize it or not. We're all working towards being happy people. So I think this is going to be one of the last episodes that I work out of the art of living for a while anyways, just because I want to start getting into some new ideas, still philosophical, still about who we are and what we mean in this whole grand universe and our small amount of time we get to spend in it. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to like touch up on that. But today I'm going to start talking about the idea kind of left us with in the last episode, where you're going to experience criticism when you start to implement the things that you've kind of worked through and realized, like, these are the sorts of things that I need to do to get better. And I'm going to try to make it as relatable as possible, but I'm going to be talking a lot about what I've seen out here on recruiting duty. I've really wanted to talk about this for a long time, and so I'll get into all of that in a minute. I want to get too heavy in the introduction here, but so it should be a fun episode, and I hope you guys find it interesting, because I got to observe a lot of cool stuff while I was out here. And again, using that, element of taking every experience and just learning something from it, is it good, is it bad, not labeling it. I think I did a really good job of doing that while I was out here. And so I'm going to share a little bit about that with you guys today. So grab your beverage of choice, or whatever you may, if you have a sour candy, this wonderful cocktail I created, if you saw my Friday tutorial. But anyways, all right, here we go. Cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. So we have the cocktail of the hour. This is brought to you by Allison's cupboard that still has way too much alcohol in it. You're probably like, wow, Allison, how much alcohol do you have? I like to drink a lot of wine on like a regular basis. Like, I don't drink a lot of heavy liquor on like the daily, you know? So I will buy this stuff because I think it looks good or it's been gifted to us or something. And you know, you just drink a little bit of it at a time. And so, yeah, that's why we still have so much, because usually I have like a glass or two of wine in the evenings. You know, I'm not going hard with the liquor every single night. Some nights, but not every night. I'm just kidding. But anyways, so this little number is called a sour candy because it kind of tastes like, you know, a generic sour candy would taste. Um, I used 1.5 ounces of American honey whiskey, which is a honey flavored whiskey, 1.5 ounces of salted caramel crown, and 1.5 ounces of triple sec, and then 3/4 ounce of lemon juice. And then I stirred that all together, and I got this. I was expecting something completely different. If you go back to my social media page on Friday, I did like a blind taste of it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It is really good. So if you're one of those that kind of likes a more sour drink, this would definitely hit the spot. So yeah, let's get into it. So just to kind of like give you a little background of like why I wanted to do this episode this way, um, I think that this will be really relatable. I just want to share some of the stuff that I've seen out here on recruiting duty. Part of it is probably to validate the time that we've been out here, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's just amazing, you know, how many people my husband has come into contact with. And like, I don't even know all the stories, but of the few that he's told me, it's been like a really cool experience, just kind of like see how people are, and from all walks of life. Like, he's gotten, you know, like the star athletes on the football team or the cross country team to join the Marine Corps, and they have really supportive and wonderful families. And then he's gotten that kid that like comes from absolutely nothing. And there was a day where my husband was driving him to his house, and there were all these trailers out in the middle of the country, and like there were kids outside playing. And my husband, well, no, not yet, sorry. Anyways, my husband made an offhanded comment just being like, oh, like there's a lot of abandoned trailers out here. And the kid was like, I wouldn't say that they're abandoned. And then sure enough, like they turn a corner, and his house is one of those that looks like an abandoned trailer, and there's like kids out in the front playing or something of that, you know, nature. And it's just like crazy. You know, these kids can't hardly even afford cell phones. Like, there's just the lowest of poverty and like, you know, the highest of wealth. Like, there's just so many different levels. And when you're in scenarios like this, it's, you know, just interesting to see how that all plays out. And so with this topic today of criticism, you know, I found it really interesting because I come from a very supportive family, especially my mom. It's just like, you know, whatever you need, like, of course, like, if that's what you want to do it, like, make a plan and go for it, you know? And especially a lot of my friends, too. Like, I don't feel like from a lot of their experiences that I've heard of theirs that their parents have ever really deterred them from going after whatever they want to go after. And even to a point of, like, you know, helping them get there. What do you need? Like, my family 100% was like, okay, what do you need to achieve this, you know? So that's the kind of like thing that I'm used to. But, you know, to hear the complete opposite and to see people that come from absolutely nothing, poverty, living in something that looks like it should be condemned, and their parents telling them not to go into the Marine Corps for selfish reasons. And it's just really crazy to me. So I'm going to get into all of that. And I think just those dynamics will kind of show you what I'm talking about, and then you can kind of apply them to, you know, maybe certain scenarios in your life. They might not be as dramatic, but, you know, just take a pause and, like, look at things and, like, how people treat you once you start kind of doing something for yourself. So I've broken this up into 5 parts. So I'll start reading this. I'm in the Art of Living book on page 30, and the title is called The pursuit of wisdom attracts critics. So this first part says, those who pursue the higher life of wisdom, who seek to live by spiritual principles, must be prepared to be laughed at and condemned. Many people who have progressively lowered their personal standards in an attempt to win social acceptance and life's comforts bitterly resent those of philosophical bent who refuse to compromise their spiritual needs and who seek to better themselves. So, again, many people who have progressively lowered their personal standards in an attempt to win social acceptance and life's comforts bitterly resent those of philosophical bent who refuse to compromise their spiritual needs and who seek to better themselves. Like, how many times have we seen this, like, in the course of existence, When you personally lower your standards, when you decide to give up on something because it's too hard, real quick, I'm just going to take like a weight loss example, and I'm putting the perspective from the person who is doing the criticism, right? So I'll just say as an example for myself, this isn't actually how I feel. I'm just using an example. If I gave up on working out and eating well, and then I saw like a really fit girl who ideally I would love to look like a Victoria's Secret model, okay? Maybe I might have bad things to say about her, like, oh, I bet she doesn't eat. Like, how many times have we heard people like accuse models of like not eating, How many times have we accused them of like being bulimic or anorexic or something? Because if I couldn't do it, then surely they can't look like that, Let alone genetics, augmented surgery, just the will to actually put the time and effort into it. They've decided their body is their job. They're going to dedicate all this time and energy to it. There are so many things, right? But if you're somebody who copped out because it got too hard for you, and you want to live in denial and pretend that like anybody who is normal can't, achieve that, then, you might be resentful. You might be mean towards people who do achieve that. So that's what that's kind of saying here. One thing that I've heard a lot as my husband's like recruited some of these kids or like tried to, and he's talking to a lot of young people. I shouldn't say kids, but a lot of young people who are between the ages of like 17 and 25. Usually, once I think the oldest you can be is like 27 or something like that, or maybe a little bit older to join. But I would say the majority of between like 17 and 25. So that's a lot of kind of life difference. You have the wide-eyed like kid who just like, high school's almost over. They're super excited. They might still be in high school when they join the program. There's all these like exciting things because all they've known is high school. And then you have some kids who have actually lived a little bit of life and realized that, it's a lot different than what they thought they were going to be. So one thing is these kids, like they come and talk to my husband because obviously they have that spark, that something that says to them, I want something more than where I'm at right now. And, young people come to him for all sorts of different things. Young adults come to him for all sorts of things. Like they wanted to be a Marine. They've wanted to be a Marine for their whole life. They are just interested in the military. So, they are curious about what their options are in the military. Maybe my husband found them and it wasn't always something that they necessarily thought they would do, but then they learn about the opportunities that the military could provide and they look at their scenario and think, oh, that would actually be a good path for me. Or for, a lot of times they've kind of lived, and I'm sure there's probably more than this, but I'm kind of just like making basic generalizations. Like they've had some life experience. It's not gone the way that they've wanted to. And so now they're like seeking other options. And a lot of times those people are a little bit older. Sometimes they made some bad life choices and it haunts them. A lot of people kind of look at the military as a backup plan, but they're actually highly selective. And I'll get in that in just a few minutes. But you know, there's a lot of people that actually get denied, especially from the Marine Corps. People think Marines are stupid or, you know, crayon eaters. They might do that. No, just kidding. um, but they're actually really smart and intelligent people, and they have to have one of the higher ASVAB scores, which is like this test is kind of like a standardized test, like you would take an ACT or SAT. But you kind of have to have some higher scores than even like the Navy or the Army to get in. And the reason why is because, you know, these branches are so selective, and even just like physically, you can't have anything wrong with you. You can't be broken going in because you're probably going to get a little broken once you're in there. But no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. But, you know, you can't go in broken. And to say it like that, it's just like, it really is. Like, there are certain things you get poked and prodded because if they find something wrong with you, you know, that's it. Your opportunity is poof, gone, you know, and all the things that could come with it. So I'll get into more of that in a minute. But what's interesting to me is when these kids come and maybe they've made some like, you know, poor life choices or whatever. Maybe they've just realized, you know, this isn't all that it's cut out to be, but they've had that spark, that inspiration, that intrigue. Let me go talk to the Marine recruiter and see what they could do for me. And my husband will talk to them. They'll get super excited about it. Yeah, this is something I want. Also, they are adults. These aren't kids that are still in high school necessarily, even though you do get this sometimes too. But I'm talking more of the ones that are on like, you know, closer to the 25 age range. And then they'll be like, yeah, I need to talk to my parents. And it's like, okay, is that a big life decision? Sure. You know, a lot of times when kids are getting out of high school and they're choosing colleges and all that, you're going to discuss it with your parents. You're going to discuss your financial options, all of that sort of stuff. If you don't go, you still are probably discussing whatever your next plan is. But some of these people, they're even married. They have a spouse and they still need to talk to their parents about it. And it just kind of blows my mind because, like, you know, I might discuss things with my mom, but, you know, I'm not going to, like, she's not going to dictate what I do. And so a lot of times once they talk to their parents, then they come back and, oh, you know, my mom doesn't want me to do it. And, you know, you would think that the general idea is just like, oh, I'm scared that you're going to die in war, but it's not. It's actually, I don't want you to be better than me. So they come back and they're just like, yeah, my mom said she can give me a job at the chicken plant, or my dad said he can give me a job at the chicken plant. Now, the chicken plant here in this area, we live in a very rural area, and it's kind of weird because it's a bunch of like rural towns connected together. So there's like one highway that goes through, and if you're on that highway, it looks like it's a hopping area. But you go off just a mile in any other direction off of that highway, like there's just country, like there's nothing out there. And so, like, the few jobs in this particular area are few and far between, but a lot of people work at the chicken plants. We have a ton of chicken farmers in the area. You have Tyson down here. So that's an area that's a place that brings in a lot of employment. So the thing is, though, is when you're in your early 20s, you know, you hear the hourly pay, you hear the benefits, whatever, it sounds not too bad, right? But then once you get into it, you realize there's not a lot of upward mobility. Long term, that pay, once you start having a family and all of that, isn't enough to really sustain yourself on. You kind of just get stuck. It's enough that it's hard to find a job somewhere else, but it's not enough to where it's like, you know, what are your other opportunities? You just kind of get stuck doing the same thing all day for the rest of your life if you choose to work there, you know, forever. And so a lot of their parents work at these places, and their parents talk them into staying and working at these places. So I don't know about you guys, but if I had a child and no matter what my job was, if my kid came to me and was like, I have this amazing opportunity and I want to do it, I would be like, go for it. You know, the benefits of the military, people can argue about it, but the reality of it is any job is going to have its difficulties. You're going to have, hard people to deal with, especially when you're younger. Unless you're a kid genius and you have created your own shit or whatever. If you're going into the world, like you finish college and you're going into the world, you're going to be working for people that are sometimes mean and jerky and, kind of like whatever. Like, it sucks. You're the lowest man on the totem pole. You don't have very much experience. So, it's going to take time to build yourself up. When you're in the military, you experience that same shit, but you're kind of in like a bubble of a world. So it's kind of hard to see that other people are going through the same thing. And, there's all these rules and regulations, and it kind of like filters into your personal life to an extent. But especially nowadays, like companies and their, policies and all of that, they have similar sort of guidelines that they want you to follow. You can't just go off and say and do whatever you want, because now everybody has an iPhone or like, smartphone, and they can take a video of you. And if your company gets wind of this and you create enough publicity around it, you could totally get fired. We've seen that so many times. So what I think is cool about the military, and especially the Marine Corps, is that, and my brother, he is 20, and so he's a junior Marine at this point in his life, and kind of seeing him work through things and hearing things through my mom that, it's hard and all this stuff, and he sees his friends and it looks like they have more freedom, but when you lay it out, it's like they don't, because sure, they can pick where they live, but what kind of places are you living in when you're 20 years old, on your own? Like, if you don't have, like, parents' help to pay for something, and, the jobs that you have, like, majority of 20-year-olds are either still living with their parents at this point, or, you have a crappy apartment, or you have a house or something that you share with, like, 5 other people, But in the Marine Corps, it's like, yeah, you have a barracks room. Is it the nicest or what, whatever. But anyways, not to get like too much into all of that, but it's just like, you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay utilities. You don't even have to pay for food if you don't want to. Again, not that all these things are like the most amazing thing ever. But really, like, the most you have is like a cell phone payment and a car payment at most. Everything else after that is like based on your choice, obviously, but it's just like, you make pretty good money for just like having hardly any bills, if any bills at all. You don't even have to have a car. Makes life easier. But so my point is saying, like, there's so many amazing opportunities, and then to put a cherry on top of all that, as soon as you get out, you get a GI Bill that pays for your college, and then not only pays for your college, but gives you a living stipend on top of it based on where you go to college at. So somebody speaking from having 3.5 years of college and incurring like $20,000 of student loan debt and still having debt that I'm paying off, damn, that's pretty amazing. And not that, if a recruiter would have talked to me when I was 18 years old, if that would have been an option, definitely not. I had my head in a completely different place. I think it would have been extremely hard to convince me otherwise. But, not only do you set yourself up so that in 4 years, if you still choose to go to college, you can make a really wise choice about what you're doing. You're a little bit older. You have some life experience. But then on top of that, you don't even have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for anything if you budget right. Like, you don't even have to have a job. You can literally just go to school. And also, there's so many other programs too. They will pay for you to go to school if you qualify. They'll pay for you to go to school to become an officer. And then you're making probably way more money than the majority of your peers would after you graduate college. Like, there's just so many opportunities. It's incredible. But it's just like, sorry, I've just seen the light. And I just feel like, the military is always looked at as a backup option. But for a lot of people, I think it should be looked at as a number one option. And if you're even lucky enough to get accepted, because there's so many different physical and even educational wise requirements. But sorry, let me get back to my point. That was my military tangent. But and this is speaking from someone who is not in the military. I've just seen a lot out here that just blows my mind, in a positive way. But when you think, going back to like those parents who are like, well, the chicken plant's good enough for me, it should be good enough for you, sort of mentality. You know what they're saying to these kids. They're saying these crazy things that they have no authority to talk about. They're telling them, horror stories that happen to people that join the military. Is it still a risk? Is there a risk value? Sure. But like my mom, when people are talking, people even tried, oh, I forgot about this. People even tried to talk to my mom, try to talk my mom to talk my brother out of joining the Marine Corps. He's wanted to be a Marine since I don't know when. It's been a really long time coming. And people would always be like, aren't you concerned that he's joining? Like, aren't you afraid for him? And my mom's like, I am less afraid of him being a Marine than going off to school at some college. Because at least in the Marine Corps, there's, the brotherhood sort of scenario. If there is drinking involved, they have each other's backs. You have a whole community of people that are watching you and having expectations out of you that are going to keep you on your toes. My mom's like, if he just went to normal college, like, I wouldn't have any idea what he was doing. Like, he could go to a party and get, like, alcohol poisoning and die. And the thing is that happens. That seriously happens. These kids go out and they have the first freedom of their entire lives. And I'm not trying to, like, scare anyone here. But, this is the first test of their lives that they're going to be put in situations. And, at least when you're in the Marine Corps or in the military of some sort, you have this community of people that need you to be at your top, And so if you get yourself in a little hairy situation or something, they're not going to leave you to die. Whereas maybe in college, you might have a scenario where maybe some buddies you made weren't actually buddies, And so it's just interesting how people even tried to talk my mom out of my brother going, as if it was even her choice, But when people see things that are unfamiliar and they see you in this path, they settled for less. They didn't go into the military route for XYZ. They had to pay off their student loans. They, didn't have the experiences they thought they would have. They didn't find adulthood wasn't as great. Whatever it is. And so it's just so strange to me that because some of us decide to settle and not reach our fullest potential, we're going to try to stop other people from doing it. I would never do that, but people do that. And so that's kind of what that first segment's talking about, and that's why I wanted to relate it, because there are so many people in this area that don't want their kids to be better than them. And it's really sad, I think. Okay, I'm going to try to speed this up. I'm talking a lot about recruiting. So the next part says, never live your life in reaction to these diminished souls. Be compassionate toward them, and at the same time, hold to what you know is good. So what that is saying is, again, just because someone's criticizing your choice, your parents are like, go work at the chicken plant with us. It's good enough for us. It should be good enough for you. You can be kind about it. You can be like, hey, you know what? I'm happy that you guys have found this for yourselves and you're okay with this quality of life. I know there's something better out there, and I want something better for myself. I found a path that can take me there. And is the military great for every single person? Absolutely not. It's, they have things set in place to weed out, and if you're someone who doesn't quite qualify, then that just means that there might be another path for you somewhere. But if you want something better, if you want to get out of your small town, or if you want to create a new something, or you just want to be a better person, don't let people's criticism affect where that takes you. be kind to them. But, you know, just accept that they're probably not going to be kind to you back because you're doing something that is more extraordinary, right? You're doing something that they didn't do. Maybe they even thought about it. Like, I'm sure in some of those scenarios, like, again, my husband gets all the time. He gets these people, and I feel bad for him when they say it. It makes me cringe, actually, because, you know, they could just say, hey, thank you for your service, and go on about that. But then they feel the need to say, yeah, I almost decided to join, but, and it's just like, it's okay. Like, it's not for everybody, but it's like you can almost tell in those people that they kind of regret maybe not looking into it a little further. And it's just really awkward because it's like my husband's just like, yeah, okay. They usually have some excuse as to why they couldn't join, whatever. Maybe some of them it's legitimate, maybe not. But again, it's just kind of one of those things like if you have a legitimate reason that you weren't able to join the military, you're probably not going to be weird about it when you thank someone for their service. You're probably not going to be, if you're content with where you're at in your life and you're happy with where your life went, you're not going to have to talk to this Marine recruiter in some bar about how, yeah, you couldn't join because of whatever random excuse you come up with. And yeah, usually the excuses are not good. They're really, really weird. And it's just like, okay. So then the third part here is when you begin your program of spiritual progress, chances are the people closest to you will deride you or accuse you of arrogance. So what that's saying is once you've acknowledged and that you're like, okay, that's fine that, this is good for you, but this is not what I want for myself. Another example, my husband has a pulley is what they call them. It's when they like come and they kind of like work out on certain days to get physically ready for boot camp. You have to be able to do certain physical tests like running and pull-ups and all of that before you can go to boot camp. And so they have this program where the people they've sworn in already at MEPS. They've been approved. They have a shipping date. Now it's just time, like it takes time for those times to come up. It's not like you go to MEPS, you swear in, and you go the next day. Every once in a while that happens, but not very often. And so it's usually months. So this is a way for the people that they've contracted for the Marine Corps to, learn some things about the Marine Corps, physically get ready for what they're going to endure at boot camp. And then, also just keep in touch so they stay motivated and inspired about wanting to join. So one of the girls that he has now, she tried to join at an earlier time, and her dad could not drive. He didn't have his driver's license. And so she had to drive him around. She'd drive him to work, drive him wherever he needed to go. And so when she talked to her dad about joining the Marine Corps, he told her no, she couldn't because he needed a driver. So here dad is making horrible choices. I won't get into everything about the dad, but making horrible choices for his life and taking his daughter down with him. Here she says something amazing that she wants to do and has every right to. She's not a child. She can go and do it if she wants. But the pressure of her father did not allow her to do that. So, not only did he turn her down, but he totally was like, no, you're not even doing it. And she allowed him to do that to her. Well, now dad went away. We'll just say that, okay? Dad isn't around anymore. Not that he's okay. I think he's fine. But he's not here. So what did she do? She went and signed up for the Marine Corps. And I'm really happy for her because it's just like now she has a path to something. And, what she decides to do after the Marine Corps will totally be up to her and her choices and what she decides to do in the Marine Corps. But I'm really glad that her dad was kind of taken out of the picture because, when you have people in your life that have such a weight on what you do, and, especially if family is very important, I think that's one of the biggest things that kind of holds us back from doing stuff, because it's just like, oh, I love my family so much and they're all I know. Um, but what are the choices that your family are making? Like, really, if you're in this scenario right now and you're just like, I have all this stuff, but like this, like maybe you want to move somewhere new or switch jobs or, um, you know, dye your hair blonde. I don't know. Whatever it is, like, and your family's like criticizing you for it. Like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's gonna be too hard for you. Oh, you can't pull off blonde. Like whatever their criticisms of what you're trying to do is. It's hard. It's a heavy weight, even more so than like maybe a friend or something, or like a spouse, because these are the people that have been with you forever, and these are the people that you've known since forever. And so, um, but it's really important, to be aware of what they might be trying to do. And if they call you out for being arrogant or, try to sway you from doing what it is that you need to do, like just be aware of that, because, that's probably going to happen, at least from somebody in your life. All right, so the fourth one here is, it is your job to comport yourself humbly and to consistently hew to your moral ideals. Cling to what you know and your heart is best. Then, if you are steadfast, the very people who ridiculed you will come to admire you. So, um, stay humble about it. They call you out on different things, don't feed into it. Um, not that my uncle would joke and say, like, well, not all of us can live in New York, Allison, when I moved out there. And he was totally joking. So I'm not really using this as like an example of someone who tried to like hold me back or whatever. Because if he ever sees this, I know you're very proud of me. But he would like kind of joke, like, like that. And it's like, to laugh at it, to be humble by it, like, that's the kind of stuff that you have to do, because it's like when those people say things that, try to get you fired up and to sway off the path that you're on, because they know if they say certain things or whatever, they can persuade you to continue to be just like them, sort of thing. Eventually, if you don't allow it to affect you, if you continue on your path and you reach whatever it is that you want to reach, they're going to come around. And if they don't, then that's on them, right? Like, they're over there, like, they can be angry and bitter because they didn't do whatever. But an example of this is Cliff had a Marine. He's a Marine now. And his stepmom, and there's a lot of weird family scenarios that we come into. A lot of times, some of these people that he enlists, like their person, their guardian, isn't even like related to them at all. Sometimes they're step parents, and like their moms and real dads aren't even in the picture. So it's kind of interesting in that too. But in this scenario, this kid, his family is just basically a bunch of drug addicts, and his stepmom has like taken him away from them and was like his guardian towards like the end of his like high school career, I think. And so right before he left for boot camp, his brother told him, he was saying goodbye, like he was shipping out for boot camp. And his brother said, hey, how about you just not go and sell drugs with me? Swear to God, this is seriously what happened. So obviously the kid was like, no. And then went to go say goodbye to his mom, like drove 2 hours to like go say goodbye to his mom. Gonna be gone for 3 months. Doesn't even, how it's kind of set up now, like, even if he comes back, it's only going to be like a 10-day vacation before he has to go back to schooling and stuff like that. COVID's made stuff like kind of weird, so the timelines have been kind of extended because they can't have people coming back and forth. But anyways, went to say goodbye to his mom. asked him to come back 2 hours from then because they had partied too hard the night before and she wasn't feeling very good. So, of course, whatever. The kid's just like, I'm done with you people. I'm going off to boot camp and going to make something of my life. So, as he was graduating, his stepmom came into the office and like kind of filled my husband in on some of the stuff. And she was crying because she was just so happy that he's made these life choices and that he's not with those people and that he's, risen above drugs and all that. And, you think that's a pretty low bar, right? Most of us would think like, yeah, it's not hard to be better than a drug dealer, but when that's your life and you're surrounded by it, to get out of that is just incredible. And so, he goes, he does the boot camp thing, all of that, and he's already getting hit up for money from his family. He is a brand new Marine, makes enough money to take care of himself. But, that's it. That's like, it's not like they're paid buckets of money. But yeah, his family is already asking him, to give him money here and there, because now at this point, he's the top dog. He's the one who's like made something of himself. And so, however that is, in that scenario, it's kind of shitty, right? Because it's like now he has to deal with these people and like create boundaries. Otherwise, they're just going to be like asking him for money all the time. So you could go that way, like a more negative route, obviously. And then in those scenarios, like you would just really need to set those boundaries, and decide how important it is to have these people in your life. Are they actually giving you something, or are they just adding like, this toxic thing that you don't really need, On another level too, though, you might have where, you've accomplished whatever and all of a sudden, like, your family's bragging about you around town, or, they admire you, they talk to you about it. Oh, like, we were concerned about this, but now we're super proud of you. I think it goes in a lot of different scenarios, in a lot of different directions, depending on how those people decide to deal with it. But just remember, like, you can't control how other people are. You can only control how you are. I'm having such a hard time these days dealing with that. So I know, easier said than done, Allison, right? But again, this is all a work in progress. This is not something that you just snap your fingers and it's all figured out. Like, it takes time. It takes multiple tellings. It takes multiple trials and tests and hearing this shit from people to, push on, push on, push on. And then finally getting to a place where, it feels good, and then maybe, they can kind of see what you've accomplished and be inspired by it, or at least, to a certain extent, be content with what you've done for yourself. And then the last part says, if you allow the mean-spirited opinions of others to make you waver in your purpose, you incur a double shame. So, again, what that's just kind of reiterating is that, like, if you let these people and their criticisms and their ideas of how you should be and how you should live your life and what kind of person you should be, what kind of parent you should be, what color of hair you should have, like any of these sorts of things, right? Then if you base any of your opinions off of those seriously when they don't agree or align with what you're already moving towards, then you are going to feel double the amount of shame for not accomplishing what you've set out to do. Because not only, let's say you don't accomplish what you want to do, but it's something that happened internally, okay? Oh man, I regret not doing that. We all know what those feelings are because, again, this is a journey. We're going to have multiple scenarios where we're not always, living up to our best potential or whatever. We're not always in that mind space of fulfillment and happiness. Sometimes life gets the better of us, and in those little ruts that we get stuck in, and it's like, oh yeah, we see a little bit of light and we crawl out of it. And then if you find yourself in another rut again, you're like, shit, I kind of let some of those ideas go away, and that's how I got back here. So if you just do it yourself, then that's shame, right? But then if you realize that somebody else and kind of inspired you to go that way, or somebody else, like, kind of manipulated you to stay in this scenario and you saw it, but you didn't do anything about it, you're going to feel even worse about yourself. And so it kind of goes back to that guy, right, who, says to my husband, "Thank you for your service," and then goes on his little story about how he couldn't join or whatever. Same goes, like, these kids or young people who went off to join the Marine Corps and then they didn't finish boot camp. Or, they allowed a parent or a girlfriend or boyfriend or somebody stop them from joining. They feel really, really shitty. And the shame that comes from that. Some people might think this is harsh, but if you do not finish boot camp, if you went to a boot camp and you did not finish boot camp, don't talk to Marines. Do not talk to them because they have absolutely no sympathy for you, no patience. It's one thing if you get like injured or something and then they like medically discharge you, but if you just leave, and it's really hard to leave boot camp. So if you leave because you're refusing to do it anymore, you are the lowest scum of the earth to any military member. It's just an unforgivable thing because you are so short-sighted to get to the other end. And I understand it's difficult, but when you mentally prepare and you're doing all this and you have people that are spending time and investing in you and all this stuff, to just quit when it's really not an option, you have to go to the lowest of the lows to be able to do that. And so it's an unforgivable thing. And my husband kind of has a few experiences where, he's enlisted a few different Marines. They went off to boot camp and they quit. And one of them in particular, it was COVID. And so how like the COVID has worked is they go in quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks. Nice hotel. Not even, it's like an Embassy Suites. It's not even like a super shitty hotel or anything. They have TV. They can't be on their phones or anything, but they can like watch TV and crap. They don't have drill instructors yelling in their faces yet. They haven't done anything. And so he's in quarantine for 2 weeks waiting to go to boot camp. And he writes his mom a letter that he can't handle it anymore. Then it comes to find out, right before he left, he had gotten married and his girlfriend is pregnant. Okay, obviously there's a lot going on there, right? So that little son of a bitch, he didn't even go to boot camp. He came back before his quarantine was over. And, obviously my husband was extremely disappointed. Well, my husband had been following the wife on Facebook because, he interacts with these people in different ways, whatever. And, at first she had like a gender reveal for their baby that they were having. Like 2 days later, she reposts all the photos as if she had like never posted them before. And she cropped this kid out of every single one to the point where like some of the stuff you could like see his hand. But it's like we just saw all these photos. And of course, like that day with him and my husband was like that, son of a bitch, like fuck him, like whatever. I hope he's happy with his choice. So then like literally 2 days later, he's like cut out of every single picture. And then the cherry on top of that is that she ends up breaking. So she broke up with him, obviously, and she ends up dating an actual Marine. So it's just like kind of hilarious because she's like, my husband was like making a joke like, yeah, she needed to go out and find herself like a real man sort of thing. But it's like, that kid, if I remember right, that kid was so invested. His parent, I think his dad was a Marine. Like his whole graduation shit was like all this Marine Corps crap. And to like have all of that put out there, all this, expectation and everything, to go and quit before you even get there, it's just like, oh my God, dude, like you didn't even give it a chance. And obviously he was experiencing pressure probably from his girlfriend and feeling like he was missing out on all these sorts of things. But, sometimes making these choices, and, obviously he wasn't meant to be a Marine. He did not have it mentally. He wasn't there. But it's like when you make these choices for yourself and like the path you're going to go, remember it's not always going to be easy. Not only are you going to have these criticisms from other people, you're going to have these outside opinions from other people, but then you yourself have to be committed to it and have to do it and go forward with it. And, you know, my husband's gotten a few that have been married with kids and or have a baby on the way. And it's like, what are your options right now? You've obviously come to talk to the recruiter because you aren't being fulfilled in where you're at right now. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? And, you know, again, if you find out that the military is not for you, that's totally understandable. But it's like, it's actually a really good option for a lot of people. It adds so much in like being a spouse of a Marine. There's so much security here that I've like never felt before, because I've always been on like this other end of like job to job. Sometimes I have healthcare, sometimes I don't. You know, is the healthcare system within the Marine Corps the easiest? No, not at all. But, you know, I at least have my basic needs met. My husband has his basic needs met. And so, yeah, there's just so many amazing things and just opportunities if you want to look at them that way. Of course, so many people can look at the more, like, they can look in things as like bad or good. But if you look at everything as just an opportunity, then I think it can be extremely fulfilling. And then the last thing I want to say about that before I wrap it up is that you have this huge purpose. And I think I mentioned this before, but like I've been envious of my husband at times, because being a Marine is not only a job, it's this title that you get to have, and it carries so much with it. Like Marine, everyone has a picture of what that looks like in their head, and their purpose of like upholding the Constitution and fighting enemies, like foreign and domestic, and doing all these different things. And you know, all the military has that. You know, they all swear in with the same oath. It's just really, really cool, because you know, not everyone gets to feel that. And there's you know, at the boot camp graduation, there was a quote, I think Chesty Puller said, and I'm not even gonna try to quote it because I think it was him, but basically anybody who, I'm going to totally butcher it, but basically anybody who becomes a Marine never has any regrets, because you've committed a certain, even if it's just one contract, you've committed a certain amount of your time to this thing that is hundreds of years in the making. The brotherhood that belongs to it, and you know, sister and brotherhood that belongs to it, is just really, really cool. And even just the military in general, there's like a camaraderie amongst the other branches even. And, you know, all these people have such a pride in what they've done. And I just, you know, I get a little teary-eyed sometimes thinking about it, because I just, you know, I haven't felt that in something that I've ever personally worked on. And I just don't know what greater purpose you could have than defending the United States of America. I mean, we live in the best country in the world. And so I think that's really cool, the pride that comes with it. So that's just my little tidbit. Okay, so to wrap it up, I know this was pretty heavy on the recruiting stuff. You guys, I've been out here for 3 years, and I've just been dying to share all of this. These little stories. If you want to hear more about some of the recruiting stories, I'd be happy to share. But I just love learning about people and their different experiences. And like I said, to see some of these kids come out of what they've come out of, and I keep saying kids, whatever. They're kids to me now. I'm old, so. But to see them, you know, thrive and do so many cool things, and it's like, again, you come out of the Marine Corps, even if you just do one contract, like 4 years, like if you want to go to college, you have a full ride, like to college. How many people actually have full rides to college, you know? And then also like the leadership skills that you've already gotten. And then on top of that, there's all these other classes that you can take within the Marine Corps. Like you can take college while you're in the Marine Corps. for certain things. Like my husband had and not use your GI Bill. I don't think people realize that. My husband had a master guns that was working on his master's, I believe, or PhD, one of the two. And I think, yeah, he was working on his PhD, and he had already gotten his graduate, his master's without using his GI Bill while he was in the Marine Corps. So, education is really important. I don't want to say that it's not, but it's like it's just amazing to me. I just think that the opportunities are incredible. But, with all of that being said, like, we're all on these different paths. We're all figuring out what's right, what's wrong for us, where we need to go, what we want to do, how we want to be, what kind of traits of, certain personalities do we want, all of the things. It could just be as simple as like, you want a clean house, like you always are walking around and things are messy, and you're just like, there are certain things you can do to have a more clean environment. One of the things that I read that kind of struck a chord with me, because I was like, I hate having messes all around all the time. Tidy people just do it like right away. So it's like, instead of, we'll just take like, you eat on a dish or something. You go to the sink after you're finished and you clean it, or you rinse it off and you put it in the dishwasher and it's done, right? Versus deciding to just set it on a countertop and walk away. Tidy people are constantly picking up after themselves. So when I thought of it that way, I was like, oh, like, I know it sounds super simple, and to some of you, you're like, well, duh, but to someone who was not always the tidiest, that was kind of an eye-opener. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess that's easy enough. And so now I do that all the time. And, up until lately, again, this is the cleanest corner of my house. But only because we're getting ready to move. But, before that, it's just like, as far as like tidy wise, like, sure, I needed to do the floors every once in a while or whatever. But, I started just practicing that. Like, oh, okay, this is my dish. I'm just going to get rid of it right now so that I don't have to continue to look at it. And you would think that's something so small. But, if you come from a family that's kind of messy people or unorganized or whatever, they might be like, why is your house so clean? Like, you think you're better than us? So it's like, it could be something that's small that you want to change for yourself that people can have issues with. Because it's like, well, shit, you're making me feel bad because my house is always dirty. And it's like, I don't know why that makes you feel bad, but okay. So anyways, point is, to wrap all this up, to wrap the series up, first it's about finding what you want, what's important to you, what kind of traits you want to have, who you want to be, what kind of mark you want to leave on this world, how you want to spend your time here, Remember, we have an infinite amount of time. We don't know when our time is going to be up. So, figure out what it is that you want to do. Second, let go of the hopes and fears and the dreams. It's not about, oh, I hope I can become, a professional dancer. It's about, realizing that, there are going to be things that come and that happen. You need to plan for it. If you want to be a professional dancer, what sort of things go into that? You don't just think about it and it happens. You have to put a lot of time and energy into it. So figure out, like, what are the steps that you need to take to get to the thing that you want to do. And then third, start putting those into practice while accepting what's going on. So trying things out, dealing with whatever comes your way, but like, if you want to be a tidy person, start practicing, start picking up things over and over again. It's kind of like creating a habit. It takes time, it takes energy into changing something for yourself. And then fourth is accepting the criticism. Understand that people are going to judge you for doing something that, is bettering yourself. People are going to give you crap for it, So not letting those criticisms affect how your outcome is. Continue to push forward. And, best case scenario, maybe they get to learn something from you. Maybe you inspire them. Maybe they at least admire you for the sort of thing that you're doing. But, don't let them affect where you're going because, again, if you do, you're going to have double the shame for it. You're going to have shame in yourself for not only failing, but for allowing somebody else to, influence that. So, failing not in a you tried something and you learn from it sort of way, failing as in you just give up entirely and whatever that thing is that you want to do. So, I hope you guys enjoy this series. This was really kind of fun for me. And it's fun to talk about some different things and ideas. I'm going through this all right now, which is why I wanted to do this series, because I have so many things that I'm thinking about and just, moving to a new place and maybe things here weren't exactly the way that I wanted them to. And so just kind of trying to be proactive on my thought process going into this next chapter of our lives. Just because I really want to start utilizing my time better. I'm really seeing the sort of thing and impact that I want to have. And, I'm tired of waiting. And so it's time to do it, Allison, right? So there will be much more, self-reflection and all that over time, and figuring out, life in Japan is definitely going to be an adjustment and all that. But I'm super excited for it. I'm super excited that you guys are going to be joining me there as, I work my way through. I'm going to definitely be sharing a lot of those experiences. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching another episode of The Bored Housewife. Again, if you're liking where this is all going, please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on other social media. Comment on that shit. Whatever. But yeah, I am. Yeah, I guess that's it. All right. Thought I had something else to say. Anyways, thanks again, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Cheers, and I'll see you soon. Bye.